saved yourself a lot of problem, because some of the lines were 9 hours long to get into the pavilion.
Yeah.
Unless if you had an American passport, if you're over 75. A lot of you go into the VIP line. The VIP line is perhaps 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, so I know I visited American Pavilion, UK Pavilion, and some, the other country, Australia. If you have IP, if you are VIP, so we can go there directly. If you have no VIP, you are not VIP, so you form a line and wait for the checking the ticket. That's a long time, especially American Pavilion.
9 hours, yeah.
Yeah. How many visitors of American Pavilion? Maybe the number one is the Chinese Pavilion. Number two is the United States. I visited, and then because I just came back from University of Chicago in 2010, and American Consul General they invited me to go there, so I'm VIP. And then we had the dinner, and I saw the president of the United States, President Obama made a address, and the Secretary of State Clinton made a address, and then some pictures and moved here.
Do you remember who the first addresses, the first welcome was Kobe Bryant, then Hillary Clinton, then Barack Obama. But Kobe Bryant was first, then Hillary Clinton.
I'm not sure who is the Kobe Bryant. Pardon? I'm not sure who. I don't know who is the Kobe Bryant.
Neither did I, because I'm not a basketball fan.
Okay, interesting.
Famous basketball player.
Oh, famous basketball.
And then the crescendo of the USA Pavilion was the gift shop. They sold pink cowboy hats, straw cowboy hats.
So very interesting stories.
Yeah.
I think American Pavilion is warmly welcomed by the Chinese audience, Chinese visitors, especially the young men. So I know the Chinese young people, especially the college students. They are
They
very
had
interested
a
in
young American speaking in fluent Mandarin welcomed the group.
Yeah.
And they had perhaps 1,500 people at a time go into the first IMAX. And the first IMAX was the welcome by Kobe Bryant and Hillary Clinton and by Barack Obama.
Now Shanghai, there is American Chamber Commerce. There is American Business Center in Shanghai, and also there is American Women Club. Women Club in Shanghai. Remember 2009 when President Obama was elected, and there's a big conference in the exhibition center. It's sponsored by the American Commerce Chamber of Commerce and the Women Club in Shanghai.
Is that in Shanghai?
It's in Shanghai. There is a Shanghai School. Shanghai Middle School has there is an international section, international section of Shanghai Middle School. There are 2,000 foreign students. This May, I visited this school. We have 3 faculty of our university visited the Shanghai School, the international section. More than 2,000 foreign students. I think the American students occupy maybe the 20 to 30% students. And then I talked with them. They told me they studied in China because their parents work in Shanghai, in China, in the other cities. Their parents work in China.
So these were
So they study in
teenagers?
China.
Teenagers?
They can speak so fluent Chinese, so fluent in Mandarin. Because some of them were born in China, and then they studied Chinese language from the primary school. But they told me their choice is still top university of the United States. I saw the top listed, the Harvard, Stanford, Yale, Princeton, Berkeley, and Cornell University, Virginia University, many.
Right.
So they finished their senior middle school study, and then most of them still choose the American top university. Yeah.
Right, that they don't have to take that test if they're going to read it, so that they're going, there's no like 2-day test they have to take for college. If they're going to American University, they don't have to take that.
I know you mean I think I'm not sure the American education examination system, but I know Chinese students who want to study in American university, they can first is TOEFL examination, and then GRE examination, and then they can contact American University directly. They just review their marks point of the TOEFL. Why? Because I have a student, a graduate. He's going to study. He wants to come to American University, but I'm not sure he has already passed the TOEFL exam. TOEFL, the score is so high, but the second condition is maybe GRE, something like that.
Program.
The GRE score is still high, then they can 2 ways. One way is they can apply the scholarship from the American institution.
Please have a seat.
And but there's the other way in China now. Many Chinese students they don't need the scholarship from the American university. They can apply the scholarship from Chinese CSC. CSC is the China Scholarship Concept. So each year we have 10,000 students, more than 10,000 students who got a scholarship from CSC. Then they study different universities. I have a student who studied at the Free University. She got a scholarship from CSC. But there's still, even you got a scholarship from CSC, the TOEFL examination, GRE examination still just the same. I'm not sure American students in China, because they are American, they study at the Chinese middle school. How do they study and enter American university? Okay. So
Yeah, almost. Let me ask you a question. How do you want me to do this? Morning tools or something? Should I?
45 minutes. Okay.
But if like 40 minutes, should I give you some?
Yes, okay. Maybe I can. Okay, I can so give you some.
Okay, I'll sit over here and
Yeah, okay.
I'll wave at that when we get the 40 minutes.
So that time,
Just so you know.
can I talk?
Yeah. Let me give you a brief introduction then.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for coming. My name is Steve Lewis. I'm the Transnational China Fellow here at the Baker Institute, and I'm very happy to introduce our guest speaker for today. In our program, you can see the formal introduction to him and his list of many accomplishments. He's one of China's top scholars of U.S. and China relations. He's written 4 books, more than 70 articles. He's been a Fulbright scholar, a visiting scholar at Northwestern, University of Chicago, and received numerous awards in China and the United States. And he's also a tireless advocate of strengthening ties and exchanges between American universities and Chinese universities, something I myself have benefited from because I've been giving lectures last year, and this fall I will do the same as well, at Tongji University in Shanghai. And for those of you who are not familiar, you might think of Tongji University as the Rice University of China, because Rice students and alumni would fit right in, because Tongji University is mainly science and engineering students and faculty. They have one of China's top architecture school, a top music school, and yet social sciences and humanities are also quite good and up and coming, and is one of the key central universities directly supported by the Chinese Ministry of Education. And so, and Dr. Qiu, in addition to coming to share his thoughts about U.S. and China relations and how they're being affected, in particular in a year of political transition in both China and in the United States, he also has been meeting with faculty and fellows and students to try and figure out new ways that we can strengthen cooperation between our two great institutions. So without further ado, please help me in welcoming Dr. Qiu to Rice University. And we've asked him to speak for about 40 minutes or so, and then open it up for questions after that.
Okay, thank you.
Please.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So it's great pleasure for me to come to Rice University. Actually, our school, my school has a good connection with Rice University, especially James Baker Institute, because Dr. Stephen Lewis served as our module lecture professor last year, and this coming October, Dr. Steve will come to our school again to teach our students. So each year we have about 5 professors to come to our school. The name of our school is School of Political Science and International Relations, Tongji University. So each year we have about at least 3. Last year we have 3, but sometimes we have 5 American professors to serve as a module lecture. Module lecture means Chinese professors teach 2 months and American professors teach 1 month or 2 months. Last year, with 3 American professors, Professor Stephen Lewis and Professor Lowell Dittmar from UC Berkeley and Professor Walter Anderson from the Johns Hopkins University. 3 American professors came to our school for serving as a module lecture professor. The shortest time is 1 month. The longest is 2 months. Okay, so actually, I'm an expert of U.S.-China relations. I'm not an expert of political science. But today I want to talk about the domestic politics, both China and the United States, the influence of domestic politics and the U.S.-China relations. This year, is very important because, this year is the 40th anniversary, 40 years anniversary of President Richard Nixon's visit in China. So I think the China and the United States finally reached agreement we call Shanghai Communique, and in 1972, and so I have no much more time to remember the history of the U.S.-China relations from 1972 to 1992. Why Richard Nixon visit China? Does this visit, for the business and the trade relations, or the strategic relations? I think today is many Chinese scholars, including American scholars, we have different opinion about his visit. But in my opinion, I think the strategic relations maybe is the most important, I think maybe top choice of Richard Nixon, because in 1970s, especially early 1970s, the United States utilized China to contain the Soviet Union, because it is very difficult for the Soviet Union and the United States to reach the agreement in the SALT I or SALT II, strategic limited weapons, nuclear weapons negotiation. But I think both China and the United States, my opinion, utilized the Soviet Union. China utilized the United States, to contain the Soviet Union. United States wanted to utilize China to contain Soviet Union, but we have. That's why we can reach the agreement, and finally we realize the normalization, because we have a common enemy, that is Soviet Union. So today we still, American scholars, professors, and Chinese professors, we reach the consensus because we have a common enemy. We have a strategic base. That is the Soviet Union. So that's why, from 1970s to 1990s, the U.S.-China relations are very strong. It was very strong, especially, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, and both China and the United States supported, the Afghanistan resistance force. Okay, so today I will talk about the 5 points, and each point I think it was only maybe 10 or 5 to 10 minutes. So I think, if you ask me, what is the definition of U.S.-China relation, I think, today's U.S.-China relations is we call the constructive strategic cooperation. Constructive strategic cooperation. This is the definition of U.S.-China relations. So you maybe remember in 1996, the President Bill Clinton visited China, and then China and the United States reached the agreement. We hope to establish the strategic partnership. But later, many issues between China and the United States. The first issue is, the 1996 United States invited the Taiwan leaders Li Denghui to visit the Cornell University because, he's alumni of Cornell University. But Li Denghui is a political leader. So United States recognized China as a legal government. Taiwan is not a country. So why did at that time Clinton administration invite Li Denghui to visit the Cornell University? But many issues, very complicated. If you want to ask me to talk about that kind of situation, I think at least talk about 1 hour and 2 hours. For instance, Secretary of State Warren Christopher made a promise to Chinese counterpart Qian Chi-cheng, foreign minister, say we will never invite, we couldn't invite Li Denghui to visit the United States. Later they changed the idea, I'm not sure, but it's a long story. And then 1996, Li Denghui visited Cornell University, and then 1999, when Premier Zhu Rongji visited United States, talk about China's access into the WTO, and President Clinton made a promise, say we welcome China to go to the enter the international organization. But suddenly, after the President Zhu Rongji returned back to China, because actually Zhu Rongji is I think he wants, when he was Prime Minister of China, I think he wanted to do more things like the political reform and economic reform, but unfortunately, several months later, after Zhu Rongji back to China, the United States, the Chinese embassy in Belgrade, was destroyed by the American missiles. The 5 missiles destroyed the Chinese embassy in Belgrade, and 3 Chinese reports were killed. Okay, so 1970s to 1980s, we have a very good bilateral relations between China and the United States. But after 1990s, I think, although Clinton administration established the strategic partnership with China, fortunately, we have never. Now, it's both Chinese leaders and American leaders, they say that we are not a strategic partnership. We are constructive strategic cooperation relations. Okay, we are not partnership. United States and Japan, United States, South Korea, maybe United States, some European countries, they are partnership. We are not partnership. What kind of relationship between China and the United States? If you want to define the U.S.-China relation, I think I can use this word. That is frenemies. We are not friends, we are not enemies. Okay, so we use the the U.S.-China ties have become a complex frenemies type relationship, where close economic and trade ties coexist with military strategic competition. That is to say, economical and trade relations, we are maybe sometimes we are partnership. And security and strategy, we are the competitors. We compete in the area of strategic in the security, like the Iranian nuclear issues, North Korea nuclear issues. We couldn't reach the consensus. Okay, so as China's political economic influence in the world is rapidly increasing, so many people understand, China now, the economic power is the second, follow the United States. So some scholars argue that China's foreign policy is primarily determined by external factors. But actually, according to the studies of international relations, the foreign policy is a continuation of domestic politics. We are, scholars of the international politics. We understand the foreign policy is the continuation of the domestic politics. So my presentation focused on the domestic factors shaping the U.S.-China relations since 2000. So I will use a little bit of time to talk about the Chinese political structure. Everyone knows China is a socialist country governed through the CCP, and the leadership of Communist Party is stated in the Chinese Constitution. So I think the political system of China and the United States, no change, at least maybe. The political system of the United States is good, but Chinese political system could not be changed maybe 20 years or 30 years or 40 years, 50 years. So this kind of political system, Chinese political system is one-party system, but we have a multi-party cooperation. One party, the ruling party is the Communist Party of China, and we have a multi-party cooperation. This kind of system is regulated by the Chinese Constitution. We have no change, I think. And the members of the Politburo exerted influence on the shaping of the foreign policy. The political bureau's role as the institution seemed to have become one of ratifying decision. So here I think here the question is, what is the decision? What kind of organization is the foreign relations decision maker? I think it is maybe you couldn't understand the Chinese political system. We have a Ministry of Foreign Affairs, like the Department of State, but actually our Ministry of Foreign Affairs has no much more power. Why? Because we have you can look at this. We have CCP leading small groups. CCP leading small groups. I think this is kind of political structure transformation. When Chairman Mao and Premier Zhou were leaders of the Communist Party, I think the foreign minister is an important position. The Minister of Foreign Affairs. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is an important position. Like Premier Zhou was served as Minister of Ministry of Foreign Affairs from 1949 to 1958. The Premier, as well as Minister of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, like a Secretary of State, he has power because he's a party leader. And then after Premier Zhou, Marshal Chen Yi. He's a Politburo member. He's a vice premier. He served as a foreign minister, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He has also power. But now, I think, the Minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has no more power compared to the, Premier Zhou's time and Chen Yi's time, because we implement the collective leadership. We are, a group of leaders who made final decision of the foreign relations. So the leading small groups of foreign affairs. The chief leader is the president of People's Republic of China, Hu Jintao. The president of People's Republic of China, he is the chief leader of the leading small groups of the foreign affairs. And then Vice Premier Wang Qishan, and then the general. Chief Staff of PLA and the State Council of Dai Bingguo. He's also one of the members. The Minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is only one of the members of this leading small group. This is the different political system structure of the foreign affairs decision making. So it's different. So China and so that's my point is China and United States share different political system, cultural, and insufficient comprehension and appreciation of each other's policy-making process, relations between the government and other entities. So the first highlights the structure and deep-rooted element in the United States and China that are not likely subject to a major change. We couldn't change our political system because our constitution regulates the political system. You couldn't change just like American constitution. You couldn't change the constitution, but you can make amendment Okay, so it's the same situation. And but the question is, China and the United States can work together to establish the trust regime. Now why with China, United States, we have many issues between China and the United States. So according to the Chinese official, government official scholars, they say we lack of trust. We need trust each other. Okay, so we should establish trust regime or mechanism to improve our bilateral relations. Okay, and the third point I want to say, maybe I also, maybe 10 minutes. So nationalism and the Sino-US relations. I think, the three issues in particular have sharpened and refocused this aspect of Chinese nationalism. The first was the bombing of Chinese embassy in Belgrade. Okay, just then I mentioned. The second key event was the collision between Chinese fighter jet and the US reconnaissance plane on August 1st. August 1st, that is a very important day for China because this day is the celebration of the Chinese People's Liberation Army. And then, the United States, the Americans, maybe, military base in Japan or, South Korea, send, spy plane to the Chinese, how can I say it's SOE? South China Sea. Okay, South China Sea. And so China send the fighter jet to maybe, these two planes knocked and crashed the Chinese, destroyed the Chinese plane and killed the Chinese pilot. This is, the second. And this kind of event caused the Chinese strong nationalism and the demonstration in the American embassy in Beijing. The third and maybe the most important issue is the U.S. weapons sale to Taiwan. Okay, so I couldn't explain in detail, and we'll look at some pictures about the three important events. So nationalistic passion have appeared to threaten the domestic legitimacy of China's leaders. And maybe, some American professors I know, when we had the conference, they said, Chinese Communist Party utilized the nationalism, but totally mistakes. The Communist Party actually, in my opinion, I think they don't like, the nationalism. Okay, why? Because you can see, the nationalistic movement actually, threatened the domestic legitimacy of China's leaders. Why? Because, when Premier Zhu Rongji returned empty-handed from his negotiation with President Clinton over China's WTO accession in April 1999, the following month, angry crowds took to the street in the Chinese cities after destruction of the Chinese embassy in Belgrade by American missiles. As the new century began, relations with the United States were further aggregated by Bush administration originally hawkish stance towards China and the heightening of the popular passion that occurred when American reconnaissance plane collided with the Chinese interceptor of Hainan Island on August 1st, 2001. So you can look at the several pictures. The first picture is this picture is the Chinese embassy in Belgrade, former Yugoslavia. The Chinese embassy was totally destroyed by the American 5 missiles. But China is the third party. China is not, the enemy of the United States and the NATO in 1999. China never supported, at that time, the former Yugoslavia to fight against the NATO and the United States. These 3 people died of missile destruction, missile attack. And now you can see this picture is original American embassy in Beijing, Guanghua Road. Maybe, Steve, this, you are very familiar. When the first time when I went to the American embassy for my Fulbright program, I visited this Guanghua Road. So many students, maybe 10,000, maybe, 20,000, or I'm not sure how many students, they went to the American embassy. In front of American embassy, they want to they want to attack the American embassy. But these are the Chinese soldiers. They protect the American embassy. You can see, most of them are, all of them are Chinese soldiers. They form the wall, the personal wall, and to hold back the Chinese demonstration. And these are the student demonstration. The strong nationalism after the Chinese embassy in Belgrade was destroyed by the American missiles. And this is Chinese students. And the second is, the two planes. The first is a reconnaissance plane of the United States, and the Chinese the fighter jet, and they crashed, they knocked, and then the American plane forced to land on the Chinese territory. This is the American military plane, and unfortunately, this young man was killed between the crash. And the American soldiers were well treated by the Chinese officials. This is Hainan Island. About 20 American soldiers, they were well treated by the local government of the Hainan Island. And the following pictures are the U.S. weapon sales to Taiwan. This is the helicopter. This is F-15. Yeah, F-16. Yeah, F-16 to Taiwan. This is Patriot missile. And this is the battleship. And this submarine. I think when we talk about the Taiwan issues, the U.S. government, American military officials, because I give a talk in American Naval War College 2010, they ask me many questions about the military relations. I'm not an expert of the military relations, but I know the United States, the U.S. government made a decision to sell weapons to Taiwan according to the Taiwan Relations Act. And in my opinion, there's several documents. I remember when President Ronald Reagan, when Reagan visited China in 1982, and he signed an agreement with the former Premier Zhao Ziyang about the arms sale, U.S. arms sale to Taiwan. According to this agreement, the U.S. government made a promise to reduce the size and the number of the weapons to Taiwan. This is agreement between China and the United States. President Ronald Reagan and the Chinese Premier Zhao Ziyang. That agreement signed in 1982, but the American scholars and maybe officials, even the think tank scholar, they told me. So the Taiwan Relations Act is a law, okay? So the law has more power, than the agreement. so the United States, must observe the law because Taiwan Relations Act is a law. So the U.S. government has to agree, observe the law, and then sell the weapons to Taiwan according to some items of the Taiwan Relations Act. That is a law. The law was ratified by the Congress. I agree with this point. But I think now the mainland and Taiwan, they maintain very good relations. So you can imagine if you come to China, you will know there are 3 million Taiwanese. Most of them are businessmen in the mainland. In the Shanghai area, it's a big Shanghai area, including Jiangsu and Zhejiang provinces, about 300,000 Taiwan businessmen. They engaged their business. They managed their company, factory, and something like that in Shanghai, this area. Okay, so I think both mainland and Taiwan maintain a good relations. Since the United States hope the mainland and Taiwan keep good relations, I think you don't sell the weapons. The U.S. government shouldn't sell the weapons to Taiwan because they maintain very good relations, right? The many Chinese, many Taiwanese now working now they are working in the mainland. The students now Chinese, the student from mainland, they can study at the universities and schools in Taiwan. The many students from Taiwan, now they study at our university. We have Tongji University have many students from Taiwan. For that university has many students from Taiwan. Okay, I think the United States and China should cooperate, work together in the issues and to deal with the issues about like something such as the arms sale to Taiwan. Recently, August 20th, Chinese Deputy General Chief Staff of People's Liberation Army visited. Now he's in the United States. Okay, I think they will talk about the issues about the arms sales because according to my know, the Obama administration has a potential resolution which about the arms sale to Taiwan. Okay, so the fourth, I think maybe 10 minutes, public opinion and the political elites. So what is the what are the political elites? I think political elites in China may be officials, military officials, think tank members, government officials, local leader officials, local government officials, and so the Chinese elites hold a positive view about the U.S. domestic affairs. For example, most Chinese officials, I think you can imagine how many Chinese leaders, their children, many Chinese Chinese leaders send their children to study in American universities. Most this morning I consulted the library, Rice Library. I saw many information about the Chinese leader, including our former leader Chairman Mao. He's grand maternal. He's maternal grand. How can I say? Grand maternal. Why? Maternal granddaughter studied at the University of Pennsylvania. And then she received her master's degree. And then now she is engaging business in Beijing. Okay, including Chairman Mao's maternal granddaughter. You can imagine. Chairman, okay, Kong Dongmei. Now she studied in the United States for 2 years. And then okay, many leaders, including our future leaders. Okay. So most think the American democratic system, market economy have brought prosperity and stability to the United States. At the same time, they do not think that the U.S. model be effectively applied to developing countries, especially China. We have different political system. We agree, the universal value. We agree, we recognize. Like Nixon visit China, he used the term. Not recognize that China is a legal country. He used the term acknowledge. Nixon, in the Shanghai Communique. So according to the Shanghai Communique, there is a sentence: the United States acknowledge only one China, because both mainland China and Taiwan, both sides recognize only one China. But they have different definition. The mainland China say the People's Republic of China is legal China, and the Taiwan side, they claim, the Republic of China, no people, okay, it's a legal country, but only one China, okay, both Taiwan and the mainland, they recognize Chiang Kai-shek and Chairman Mao, only one China in the world. So the United States acknowledged this, the status quo, okay, and now in China, only 50% of the elite believe that the U.S. political system is universal, significant, and worth studying and learning from. It's only 15% about. So many elites have a positive view of U.S. higher education and advanced technology. Most would like to send their children to study in an American school. They also would not oppose having their children work in the United States after their graduation. I think this kind of tendency will play a positive role in the future Sino-US relations. And many American Chinese elites believe trade is mutually beneficial. It's mutually beneficial. Although many American officials criticize Chinese government to manipulate, the exchange rate of RMB and the U.S. dollar. Actually, I think it's mutually beneficial. Both So, but concern about the trade deficit, intellectual property rights protection. So the United States, the concern, the trade deficit, because we are the balance, you are the imbalance, we are the favorite, okay? So the U.S. government concern the trade deficit, intellectual property protection. I think, I will talk about my American friends. So many American scholars, government officials, they concern the Chinese intellectual property rights. But I think the Chinese government, in local government, the central government are very interested, very, pay much more attention to the, protection of the intellectual property rights. Our university, Tongji University, we have a school of law school. And another school is the School of the Intellectual Property Rights. The scholars, a group of scholars who study, how to protect the intellectual property right. Okay, but China is a huge population, 1.4 billion population. It is a very complicated, group of the people. So it's very difficult. It's hard for the central government or the local government to make a decision to how to use the how can I say, the cohesive regulation, but that is totally impossible. Now, China is much more now, the kind of tendency of democracy. The Chinese elites could not believe the U.S. Treasury bonds are safe investment. Although a large majority of American elites expect Chinese investment, U.S. will create jobs, improve U.S.-China ties. The American public is concerned about the potential loss of U.S. technology. So there's so we have some misunderstanding. And now, here I can show you, the American public opinion about China, according to the Chicago Council 2007 national poll. Okay, Chicago Council is very famous. He often, when I was in the University of Chicago, I visited, them. Some of them, they would like to make, the public national poll to study the public opinion on China. Okay, so you can look at this is according to the Chicago Council, the U.S. public opinion on China. So the first is the symbolic threat scale. So they study this kind of issue. What about China's rise? China is now we call China's peaceful rise, but the Western countries, the Western country argues that China's rise is kind of so-called threat. So this, the Chicago Council, from two sides to make public opinion about the symbolic threat scale. The first is symbolic threat scale, the 6 point. Okay, the first, Chinese value and beliefs are a threat to American way of life. This is first. And some other people argue Chinese culture has enriched the U.S. society. And the Chinese system of government is a threat of American democracy. But the other says the Chinese political system is become more democratic over time. And the Chinese political leaders are, they do not respect the freedom of religion that Americans hold dear. Some scholars say, some people argue the Chinese values and beliefs are quite similar to those of Christian America. So this is different. And about the symbolic threat scale. And what about the material threat scale? Also different. Someone say China's rise is power, dangerous U.S. security. Someone say China's rise will help stabilize East Asia and promote world peace. And someone argued Chinese economic growth undermines U.S. economic prosperity. And others argued a growing Chinese economy is good for the working Americans. And someone says the recent increase in the Chinese defense spending undermines U.S. security. And some others says the Chinese military is a reliable U.S. partner in combating urgent security issues such as international terror. So it's much more diverse. diversified arguments according to the Chicago Council 2007's poll. Okay, the last point, okay, how many? Okay, so the last point is about the U.S. presidential campaign and the Sino-US relations. China has been an issue in U.S. presidential campaigns dating back to 1970s. Okay, so from the from the Carter administration, when China and the United States established full diplomatic relations in 1979, from that time, and China case becomes the American domestic politics, especially the China issue has a very important influence, very important factor influencing the presidential campaign. So the 2012 race has been no shortage of provocative language about China. So although the foreign policy in general appears unlikely to become a major focus of this year's election, this year, because China and the United States both, it's a big change for both China and the United States. Chinese political leaders will change in 1 month and a half later, because our 18th Party National Congress will be held in October, this coming October, the same time the American presidential election. So I think we will have a group of new leaders. So, I'm figuring out, this time is very important for both China and the United States. We will have a new leader, you will have a new president, although whether Obama will be re-elected, it's a new term, okay? So both parties have placed American relations with China at the center of their foreign policy priority, with a clear expectation that China's economical weight, strategical intention, military capability will be increasingly impact on U.S. foreign policy. So we can look at President Obama. The Obama administration has moved over time toward a stronger focus on hedging against China's power. What is the American strategy towards China today? It's a hedging policy. What is a hedging? Means, economical relations, very good economic relations. United States and China maintain very good economic and trade relations. We are trade partnership, although we have some disputes, like the rate exchange of RMB and the US dollar, the intellectual property rights, trade deficit. There are many issues. We have still a trade partner and economic partner. So the United States, the Obama administration still hopes to improve our trade relations and economical relations on this side. On the other side, the United States, because it's a hedging, so on the other side, the Obama administration, like the Bush administration, maybe I think, but later the second term of Bush administration, the U.S.-China relations was very good, and anti-terror war, China and the United States work together, and we have done a lot of issues. We have done a lot of things in Afghanistan. We help Chinese military sides, help the American. The troops in Afghanistan, we blocked the Afghanistan border, and then we prevent the Taliban from escaping China. Okay, so we have good cooperation. Now but Obama administration implements the hedge policy against China. One side, trade, economic, we are partnership. Security, we are the competitor. We have many hot pots, like the Iranian nuclear issues, North Korea nuclear issues, South China Sea, and especially the Obama administration. how can I use the word? It's a pivotal policy. It's a, create pivotal policy and carry out the pivotal policy, rebalance. Okay, last year, 2011, after Secretary of State Clinton made an address in the APCSS in the Hawaii, and actually, I think this policy, the Obama administration, the policy of the United States has a deep background. Why? From 2006 from 2006, I met many scholars in Washington D.C. Some scholars, think tank scholars like Robert Kagan, Robert Kaplan, Charles Kubuchin from Georgetown University. Robert Kagan now he's a research fellow at the Brookings Institution. Jonathan Bullock now he's also a research fellow at the Brookings Institution. And many scholars, they are the members of the think tank. They published, they had the article published in famous journals like Foreign Affairs, International Security, International Organization. Those journals are very famous in the United States. In China, we all, the scholars in China for international relations, we are very familiar with these journals. And Robert Kagan, Robert Kaplan, and including professor from University of Chicago, John Muir Shemier, they published articles. They advocated, say, the United States must withdraw from Afghanistan war, Iraq war, and then we look back to Asia Pacific. So those scholars, if you go to the website, or if you read some journals like Foreign Affairs, International Security, so actually the Bush administration, they ignored some issues like Asia Pacific, China's peaceful rise, the South China Sea. They have no time to figure out some issues from the Asia Pacific, South China Sea. They were involving the Iraq war and Afghanistan war. They have no time and no other energy to look at the other issues. I think the pivotal policy, the source of the pivotal policy, originally from 2006 to 2007. Now, the United States, the policy is quite clear. The Asia Pacific, the United States still is a dominant power. I published an article. I wrote an article about the power transition. I used the three period. The power transition. The first period is maintain the status quo, so in the Asia Pacific. The second is negotiate, and then the power transition. The third is the power transition in the Asia Pacific. But I think this point. I think if you have interest, we can talk. Slow the email. Okay, so the two double policy against China's peaceful rise, trade, economical relations, we are partnership, the security and the strategical relations, we are the competitors. So the Obama administration's policy, I think there will be no change if Obama will be re-elected as president of the United States. But the Governor Romney's policy, I think it's quite clear. Especially recently, every time I think if I watch TV, I saw Governor Romney's some terms about China. You can see he argued, he criticized Chinese the foreign policy. He argued that China has made it clear it intends to be a military and economical superpower. But actually China never claimed. Chinese government never claim, so we will want to be an economic and a superpower. No. Maybe this governor read some articles and public opinion, not a government statement. So the government, Chinese government never mentioned we hope to be a military and economic superpower, because we have we couldn't become a military and economic power within a short period. And underscore that China's economic and military ascendance helps justify many of the prophecies. He indicated that China relies too heavily on exports to the United States to risk a trade war with America. China's applying system of retaliation for preemptive U.S. Moves outside the World Trade Organization process indicate that China will escalate rather than accommodate. Okay, so Romney advocates a vigorous reassertion of American privacy. He argued that China's growing strength must be counterbalanced by the appreciably increased U.S. military presence and heightened security relationship with the regional security partners. What are the regional security partners? Japan, South Korea, Australia, and maybe recently I think Malaysia is also U.S. security partner. I'm sure. Okay, this is last. So he also criticized China for abusing commercial practice and for denying its people's basic freedom and human rights. So this is typical American domestic politics, using the presidential campaign and then criticize the Chinese policy, policy, and attract the voters. After he became a president of the United States, and I think the first thing for him, like President Bush, and the first thing for him is how to improve the relations with China. Now it's politics, utilize the voters to support him. And then, if he becomes a president, he will do another things, develop the bilateral relations between China and the United States. This is American politics from Nixon administration until, Obama administration. No change. So, okay. So he has promised to take care of the China's currency manipulator on his first day in office. He also calls unequivocal support for distance groups within China, faulting the Obama administration for not doing so out of fear of offending the Chinese government. Okay, this is the picture about the Governor nominee. And the last thing I would like to talk about, also if you want to know more about the domestic politics and American presidential campaign and the U.S.-China relation, I strongly recommend to read some articles by those scholars. Okay. So the last, I want to say the last few words. The Chinese leadership is following the U.S. presidential campaign very closely. This is the fact. We concern U.S. presidential campaign. Okay, because whoever gets elected, many may make policies that have serious consequences for China. In the past, it is fashionable to criticize China during an election, but some of these criticisms reflect U.S. domestic problems. Significant parts of U.S. economy are in trouble, and you need to find a scapegoat. And China happened to be the one, but we don't care about that. But we care, how to improve the U.S.-China bilateral relations when you become a president of the United States. So if the past experience serves as a guide, a new president will not significantly change the U.S. policy toward China because the relationship between the two countries has become so close and the interests have become so intertwined. Any change will bring a knockout damage to U.S. economy and U.S. national interests. We hold about 1.7 trillion U.S. treasury bond. Okay, there are more than 30,000 American companies in China. We are China is the third largest trade partner of the United States. United States is the second largest trade partner of China, which is the largest EU. EU has 27 countries, okay? So the United States actually is from the level of the country. The United States is our largest trade partner. China is the third largest trade partner of United States, Canada, Mexico, and then China. And the investment and other exchanges, like the student exchange. We have 500,000 students who study in American university, and even this summer, last week I came from Shanghai. I met a girl from Hangzhou. She is going to study at the American primary school, middle school. She's not a college student. She's a senior middle school student. So we have 500,000 Chinese students who study in the United States. We have about 100,000 American students who study in China. Okay, so we have many exchanges, including military exchanges. So any actions like the damaged action. I think any actions will damage the U.S.-China relations in the future. Okay, so thank you very much. So I hope you can take questions, and if I so I can talk with you if it is possible. But if the question is my expertise, if the question about U.S.-China relations, but if some questions which is not included in the U.S.-China relations, I can also express my personal opinion. Okay. Sure.
The first question?
Could you comment on the relationship between China and the United States from 1875 to 1835, and how does that affect the relationship between the two countries today?
Okay, so I think 1872 to 1875, right?
1935. 1875 to 1935.
1975.
No.
1875.
Post-Civil War.
1835. 1875 to 1935. This is 100 years, right?
No, it's not quite 100 years. About
Why are you
60
choosing that time frame? Explain your question.
The reason being is that that's part of the history I'm really not as familiar with. It's also kind of the point of the opening of the Industrial Revolution and the communist revolution, I guess, in China. So it's kind of a period of time.
Okay, so I think I try to catch the time. Okay, because maybe this question, if you ask me to express my idea about the historical relations between China and the United States from 1875 to 1975, right? 1935. Okay, that is okay, 1935, because I published 2 books. Both books involving this period. The first book is actually from 1784 to 1844. It's earlier than your the question. Okay, so 1875, the United States just maybe the after the Civil War, 1860s, and then the economy of this country developed so quickly. And China at that time is after we call the Tongji restoration, because the emperor Tongji, after the 1860s, the coup d'etat, okay, the Chinese Qing dynasty, the coup d'etat, okay, 1870s for China is a good time. And I know, in many things about the U.S.-China relations from 1870s. I know, many American businessmen and American missionaries, and they came to China. Missionaries, they live in China for 2 kind of things. One is education. The other is, but as well, the spread gospel. Okay, the spread gospel is the most major issue most important thing for the missionaries. But they did the 2 things. One is education. The other is medical service. Now in China, we have many universities strongly connected with the former university, like East China Normal University. Occasionally, in the past, this university is St. John University is the missionary university. So 2 things. 2 businesses. One is education. The other is medical services. Many Chinese American missionaries, they came to China and did these two things, education and the medical service. On the other side, the official relation between China and the United States has been improved because maybe the original the American the Western embassy before 1860, they are not in Beijing, okay, they are in Tianjin. And after this 1870s, most of the Western embassies and the consul general, they moved from Tianjin to Beijing, okay, and this is the second. So after that, China, the relationship between China and the United States, I think, maybe, according to the Chinese leaders in the Qing dynasty, they praised the United States, the real democratic country. If you read some articles and books by the governor of Fujian governor Xu Jiyu, he published articles and books. And before that, maybe after the Opium War, he utilized the United States political system. He praised American political system, and then later many Chinese students who who study in American universities, and then they came back. They also praised the American political system, democracy. This is a good relationship in the 1870s to 1880s. But the relationship between China and the United States became worse in 1890s. 1890s, and the United States joined the Westerners, we call Eight Allies, and to invade China because the Qing dynasty, the Doge, the Qing dynasty in 1900, maybe before 18. So many issues. For instance, the China had a strong nationalism. The Qing government encouraged the local people. We call the Boxer movement to kill the foreigners, to kill the missionaries, and then actually the Qing dynasty utilized the Chinese people. Chinese, the average people, especially the Boxer movement, and then when the Eight Allies troops, the troops from 8 countries invaded Beijing, so they came to Beijing, and then the Qing dynasty cooperated with the 8 countries. Finally, they killed the Boxer, the Chinese people. But 1898, there is an important issue. That is, the President of the United States, William McKinley, and the Secretary of State is John Hay. And they issued the famous policy, which we call the open door policy. Why, United States government issued the open door policy? Because the other countries like Japan, Russia, UK, and France, they wanted to separate China, to divide China. We have Yangtze River. These belong to Japan, to UK, Northeast China, Japan, and Russia. The whole China, became several parts. But the United States wanted to maintain China as the integrated country. And that is, the reason for the open door policy. But actually, now we scholars in China study, this policy, the open door policy, and we made a conclusion that the two sides. One side is the United States help China to maintain the sovereignty and the integrity, and the United States, also, got benefits and business interests from the Chinese markets. So United States hope, China still open the market to all the countries, not only several countries like Japan, Russia, and the UK. So I think, this policy in China, it's a controversial. We have different opinion. But most of the scholars and even officials, they recognize in the critical time United States maintain the Chinese sovereignty and territory. That is, the 1890s. And after the revolution, we call the 1911 revolution, we call which Shanghai 革命. How can I say in English? It's Shanghai 革命 in English. I forgot it. I forgot. It's what kind of revolution? It's a 1911 revolution. I think they have a special term called 1911 revolution, and the United States from 1911 supported the Chinese nationalism, Chinese nationalists. And then, 1927, the United States established diplomatic relations with nationalist government in Beijing. That is not, Chiang Kai-shek. And then, Chiang Kai-shek established another nationalist government in Nanjing. So we have two capitals. But the several years later, the American embassy in China still in Beijing, but they recognize the nationalist Nanjing government as a legal government. So I published a book about the U.S.-China economic relations from 1927 to 1937. These 10 years we call the golden time between China and the United States. We have many economic cooperation and the political relations. Political relations is very good. Economic relations is very good. So if you want to make whole views about U.S.-China relations from 1875 to 1975, this is 60 years. I think, I strongly recommend you to read some books about William Colby. He's a professor of Harvard University. And Jonathan Spence, he's a professor of Yale University. And
Professor Qiu.
I'm not, and it's American professors. I know some, William Colby, Jonathan Spencer, and the John Fairbank, but he died. He's a professor of Harvard University. He died in more than 20 years ago. So those books will tell you, relationship between China and United States from 1935, from 1875 to 1935. There are many good books.
There's some other questions?
Recently, I think it was less than a month ago, President Obama filed a trade dispute complaint with the WTO with China. And you mentioned in your speech that China and the U.S. has great economic relations, especially given the scope of the entire China-U.S. relations. But I was just wondering what your opinion is on the effectiveness of the WTO's dispute settlement mechanism in terms of how the U.S. and China deal with their trade disputes.
Yeah, I think we have many trade disputes, and we have many cases. Both China and the United States, we both use the WTO mechanism to how can I say, to appeal the other country. For instance, we use the WTO mechanism to how can I say, to sue, the United States, using, the trade policy and we call the prejudice policies against China, and to make a sanction against Chinese economy. The United States is also use this kind of mechanism, WTO mechanism, to sue China. But I tell you, I published an article about the relationship between China and United States, and the relationship between China and the EU, the trade relations. I use quantitative studies, a lot of statistics. This article published in Social Science in China, 2009. And if you read this article, you will find, actually, the case between China and the United States is, I would say, fewer than, the cases between China and the EU. We have many cases, and between our country and the European countries. So I think my point is the trade relations between China and the United States are almost good, but that does not mean we have no problem. We have no issue. We have many issues, but compared to the other China and Japan, China and the EU, we have many trade disputes. But it depends on the WTO regime mechanism. How does China utilize the WTO mechanism to regulate? And the United States asked China to regulate Chinese market. Also, we asked the United States to utilize to observe the WTO regulations to not to make sanction policy towards China, not to make a prejudice policy towards China. I think maybe so. There are some issues. Still, we have some issues, but we have the strategical, economical dialogue channel. We hope, we have many issues. We cannot, the issues could not be resolved by the WTO, but we can deal with these issues through our strategical, economic dialogue between China and the United States. It's the highest level of the bilateral strategic and dialogue channel. It's a regime mechanism. The top leaders from China, vice premier and state councilor and the secretary of treasury and the secretary of state. This is, strategic and economic dialogue. I think, many issues we can we can deal with these issues through the strategic and economic dialogue mechanism.
Another question?
Yes, climate scientists are pretty much astounded that the governments of the world have not mounted an effective response to the climate change crisis. One of the major problems seems to be that China and the United States cannot agree on the issue. And I'm wondering your perspective of the possibility of China taking a world leadership role in helping to break this logjam.
Yeah, I think it's hard for me. My opinion is quite clear. It's hard for China to reach the consensus in the some international agreements involving the climate change, like Copenhagen Conference. I remember when Chinese Prime Minister Premier Wen he participated the Copenhagen Conference, and he talked with President Obama several times, both public talk and personal talk about the how to reduce the emission. How can I say it's the
Emissions.
The emissions, right? Or carbon dioxide emissions, and finally they couldn't reach the agreement. And in China, so just then I mentioned the important issues like how to reduce the carbon dioxide emission. That is not a big small question. It is not big. It is a big issue. Now China is you can imagine we need energy, right? But we also develop so quickly our automobile industry. The United States, the country on wheel. We I think maybe 20 years later, we also a country on wheel. So I think the American family, each family has a car or van, or two cars or van. But I think in maybe 20 years later, Chinese family, each family will be a car or a van. But it's very difficult. So our Chinese policy is quite clear. The developed country has already experienced this period. Our developing countries, we have we have to experience this period. Means the pollution and how can I say the energy and the pollution time. So we just like China and India, we have this period, but the developed country has already experienced this period. So that is unequal. So you passed, you in 20 years or 30 years ago, you experienced, this kind of, energy cost and the pollution, but we need to develop. The question is, I think even Premier Wen Jiabao, he has no power to make the final decision, to make compromise with President Obama. He has no power to make such kind of decision. It is, the issue. It is issue for the, our Communist Party is, the legitimacy. What is our legitimacy of our party? That is to improve people's life, to develop our economy. That is, the only legitimacy of our party, our party, to show our legitimacy to our country, to the Chinese people. What is the legitimacy of the Communist Party? It's a ruling party, right? So he made a promise. We develop our economy. We improve, our people's life. So I think, it is very difficult for China and the United States to reach the consensus in the climate change according to American regulations or the criteria. It is very difficult. Okay.
Yes, if I may ask two quick questions. One is, I don't expect the new regime in China to be just reactive to American issues. My question is, what issues specifically do you think the new regime in China will press as Chinese issues with America? And the second question is, advisors to, let's say, a Romney administration, I'm just curious what American advisors may be very strong or influential in Chinese policy with a President Romney administration. I would think that Ambassador Huntsman might have played a role, but I know they had sort of pretty bitter words during the campaign. Who do you think might be somebody who would be influential in a Romney administration on Chinese policy?
Okay, these two questions are, I think, very good questions. Now China is, I think, that you are right, that the top leaders of China, especially the leadership of the priority of China is still the domestic issue of our country. But we often emphasize, we often argue, the U.S.-China relations is the most important bilateral relation in the world. When President Obama visited China and President Hu Jintao visited the United States, both of them, recognize, our bilateral relations is the most important bilateral in the world. You are number one in the world, we are number two, right? So this is. So from the economical power, if you judge the country's comprehensive power, especially the economical power, I think the United States is number one, China is number two, and if you judge the country, just then I mentioned from comprehensive, I think the United States is number one, China is number two. Why? Both we are the permanent member of Security Council. We are the strong military power. We couldn't compare with the American military power, but we still, very strong military power country. So I think, the domestic issues is our priority choice, priority of our country. But if we talk about the Chinese international relations, I think the United States is the most important country for Chinese leaders to, to look at, to concern, and to make a decision. I think the first is the United States, and then the other countries. I hope the United States is in China. We recognize the United States a democratic country. This country is full of the freedom and the democracy. We recognize the United States as the political system is good. But we, most Chinese leaders, I think most of Chinese leaders, including senior leaders, they don't like the American foreign policy. It's not the political system. Foreign policy, we don't like your foreign policy. Your foreign policy, sometimes we call hegemonic foreign policy. because you always utilize your military power to attack the country like Iraq. Actually, originally when I was in United States, the Bush administration, Iraq has nuclear weapons, but finally Iraq has no nuclear weapons, right? But what is the goal? What is the reason for the Iraq war? Only kill Saddam Hussein? What's the reason for the Iraq war of the United States? Could you tell me what is your reason or the source of the Iraq war? And you say, Iraq has nuclear weapons and chemical mass destructive weapons. And finally, the American troops, such the whole country couldn't find any, chemical weapon and nuclear weapons. And the American soldiers died more than 3,000. I'm not sure how many soldiers died. More than that. So we don't like, American foreign policy. We don't. That is not refers to, we don't like, American political system. Your foreign policy is a question. And Afghanistan war, we agree with, this. We support, the Afghanistan war. But when the Afghanistan war, the United States government, the Department of State, adopted double standard policies. So when you say, Taliban is terrorist act, but you didn't recognize our, the Muslim or maybe, the other people, they also attack, our Chinese government, Chinese civilians facilities. You don't recognize they are the terrorists. So the only Taliban is the terrorist. The others you don't recognize, especially, China. So we have Muslim, Xinjiang Uyghurs Autonomous Region, and Tibet. Some, the rebels, so they attack the civilian people. You don't recognize this is the terrorist. You say, this is, it's a kind of nationalism, or maybe this is we call the double valued standard. So yeah, that's the question. And then the second question, I think is very interesting. You mentioned the advisor of the governor nominee, whether he has some influence in Chinese policy, right? I think the advisors of the American presidential candidate, all of them, they have influence. They have influence on China. Like I can mention, give you an example. When President Obama and John McCain, they engaged in the presidential campaign in 2008. I know some advisors of President Obama. Now they are famous scholars of China studies, like Kenneth Libersol, David Lampton. David Lampton, he's advisor of Obama presidential campaign. He is the former chairman of US-China Relation Committee. National Committee, US-China Relations. He's the former chairman. He met Chinese Premier Li Peng and Zhu Rongqi several times. He also met with Chinese President Jiang Zemin. So he has big influence in Chinese politics. And Kenneth Libersol, he's a well-known China expert. He also has influence in Chinese politics. And now, we established a new research group between China and the United States in Beijing and Washington, both respectively. That is, Clean Energy Studies Center. We, study clean energy, how to use, which we call the renewable, energies. So Clean Energy Studies Center, both in Beijing and Washington, D.C. The Kenneth Libersol is the director of the American side, American part, and now they are the advisors of your presidential candidates. Okay, so I think some advisors now. Libersol and Lampton, they are, the political influence. Some, advisors, they have some influence in the area of military. Some of, they have some influence in the area of the trade and the economy. So it depends on, who is the advisor of the president. I'm not sure Romney, but it's saying the advisor of Romney, he has some connections with the Chinese trade or, the economic sections. So Romney speaks a lot of, the issues about the China issues, about issues, a lot of issues about China every day.
I think maybe you have time for one more question. If you had your hand up.
It's been answered.
Okay. All right, we'll have one last question, and then we can break for one-on-one discussions.
Do you think China will repeal this one-child policy that they have right now, given the demographic constraints that are coming up in China today?
The one-child policy.
Yeah, will they change
One child. No, one child.
One child.
One-child policy. In China we see, the one-child policy involving the issues of family planning. So, I think, as I know, some areas in the Xinjiang Uyghurs Autonomous Region, Tibet, the Guangxi Zhuang Autonomous Region, the Jilin Province in the Mongolia, they have already implemented, one family, 2 children or 3 children policy. Now the question is, now the one-child policy has become a social issue in big cities like Beijing and Shanghai, the other cities, Nanjing and Xi'an. This is not only, the family issue, it's a big social issues. Now, because, you can imagine the 2 families, 4 old people, and then, only 2 children, okay? Maybe, if the 3 generations, maybe 8 old people and only 4 children or 2 children. So that's a big issue. It's a big challenge for the Chinese, the social welfare system. If we have, if our people, like your people, we have, very good pension system. Okay, you have a pension system, right? We have also, social welfare system, very good social welfare system. In Shanghai, if you are old man, you have no children, the local government will give you, now it's 500 Chinese yuan each month. It's the lowest, we call the lowest living standard, 500. But in the other area, as my hometown is in Jiangsu province, I know it's a 200, 300, it's different. But we have already established this kind of social welfare system. So if you have no children, the government will give you, the money. But that is not, the system like your pension system. Because, we have many people who actually no job, right? In the countryside, they have no job. They are farmers, right? So they have no pension. We try, but the government, as I know, the state council, some official, they are studying. They are studying, we try to establish very good the social welfare system. If we have a very good social welfare system, I think the one-child policy is not a big issue, not a big challenge for China, because as I know, the universities and the government agent organizations, most family they don't like 2 children or 3 children. One child they think it's good. If we have very good the social welfare system.
Well, thank you very much for being a wonderful audience, and thank you, Dr. Qiu.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome to China. Welcome to my university, Tongji University.